WWE has signed several high-profile former AEW stars so far in 2025, with the likes of Ricky Starks, Miro, and Malachi Black all signing from All Elite Wrestling. With that being said, as we get closer to the end of 2025 and head into 2026, could there be more former AEW stars on their way to WWE? In this video, we're going to let you know 5 possible names that could be set to join WWE from All Elite Wrestling. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. Before we begin today's countdown video, you can see right there, we are just over 130 subscribers away from 25k. That was our goal, to get 25k in 2025. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. Let's see if we can get to 25k before the end of the year. Now, as I spoke about in this intro, 2025 has seen several former AEW stars jump over to WWE. Whether it names that we expected, like Miro or Aleister Black, but others that were also maybe AEW, not originals, but people who have never been in WWE before, like Ricky Starks. He's now Ricky Saints, and he's now the NXT champion. With that being said, could we be set to see more names jump over from AEW to WWE in the near future, whether it be at the end of this year or into next year? We're going to get into 5 names that could be set to join WWE at some point, beginning with Chris Jericho. Now, at the moment, probably the most high-profile name that people are speculating about when it comes to their future with All Elite Wrestling is the inaugural AEW World Champion, Chris Jericho. Someone that, of course, does have this huge history with AEW. One of the biggest signings that they made out of the gate, Tony Khan managing to lure Chris Jericho to actually sign for another company in North America not named WWE for the first time since 1999. Jericho had been very public, saying he would never wrestle for another company outside of WWE. He kind of didn't break the rule, but bent the rule when he worked for New Japan Pro Wrestling, but he then added a little amendment to it, said, well, I'll never work for another pro wrestling company in the United States. He then appeared at the inaugural All In show, where he said, well, that wasn't technically working for a company, and I don't know about that. The following year, though, he signed with All Elite Wrestling. He main evented, of course, AEW All Out. In addition to that, he also became the AEW World Champion, the very first. Now, since then, Jericho has had title reigns with the FTW Championship, the Ring of Honor World Championship, among others. But there's been speculation about his future. We haven't seen Chris Jericho on AEW programming since April. Of course, he lost the Ring of Honor World Championship to Bandito at Dynasty. Subsequently, on the following episode of AEW Dynamite, he broke up the learning tree and said he had to go away for a while. We haven't seen Jericho since. At the time, it was thought he was just taking some time off TV. He was going on tour with Fozzy, but he would be back. But we haven't seen him. We haven't. And in that absence of Jericho being on AEW television, there's been lots of reports and chatter about him possibly returning to WWE for the first time since 2018. Jericho's been liking Instagram posts about a possible WWE return. He's been speaking in interviews saying that he would be open to a return to World Wrestling Entertainment, even though previously he said he'd probably end his career in All Elite Wrestling. Furthermore, Jericho's AEW contract reportedly is set to expire at the end of December. There have been reports that WWE have been talking about a possible return for Y2J, with a bit of an internal expectation within WWE that it will likely be returning at the 2026 Royal Rumble, which is taking place in Saudi Arabia. Of course, it was the greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia back in 2018, where Jericho had his last WWE match. So for him to return at the Royal Rumble, not technically the same event, but maybe in the same kind of match, that would be somewhat poetic, wouldn't it? Now, there has, as I mentioned, been so much speculation about his future. You can't rule out a possibility of him staying in All Elite Wrestling. Tony Khan has spoken about how he really wants to keep Jericho and hope that he's coming back, and Jericho's been so important throughout the history of All Elite Wrestling. But then Jericho continues to talk. His recent comments about TNA's crowd at Bound for Glory felt like a bit of a slight possibly against All Elite Wrestling. He said, quotes, "That crowd looked huge. It looked huge. It was like a WWE level crowd. The place was packed. I was watching this, not saying anything else out of school here, but comparing it to watching Dynamite when they were at the ECW arena, which looked like a Tony Candela taping, sorry it did, TNA looked like the second biggest company in the world. That was amazing. The presentation was amazing. It looked like a WrestleMania. It really did. This once again led to more speculation that maybe Jericho indeed is on his way back to WWE. He recently posted a picture of himself with Kevin Owens, of course, someone who was really part of Jericho's last big storyline in WWE with the whole Festival of Friendship. At one point, scheduled to main event WrestleMania 33, instead became the second match on the show, and a match on a show that Vince McMahon was not very happy about, calling it one of the worst matches in WrestleMania history. So with all the speculation surrounding Y2J going back to WWE, it feels like this one's inevitable. What else is there for Jericho to do in AEW? Jericho, frankly, has felt pretty stale for the last couple of years in All Elite Wrestling. His whole learning tree gimmick and him talking about the Jericho Vortex and they're not saying please retire. It was kind of trying to lean in to the negative criticism of Jericho, which in recent years has been that he's past his prime, he's past his best, he hogs TV time, and he really just goes up to people that have a bit of momentum, people are talking about, and then uses them as a bit of a clout vampire, essentially, to try and keep himself relevant. Who's really benefited from working with Chris Jericho in AEW, some of the cynics say. Maybe a bit like Cody Rhodes when the crowd had turned on him and the general sentiment was against him in AEW. Maybe the right thing to do is go to another territory where he can be a bit fresh again, where absence really has made the heart grow fonder. So we'll have to wait and see if Jericho goes back to WWE in 2026. Now, before we move on to the next name on this countdown list, a reminder, this video is brought to you in collaboration with all of our great affiliates. That includes NordVPN. You can see right there, you can get up to 77% off plus 3 months extra. All you have to do is scan our QR code or use our custom link. That's nordvpn.com/WN365. That's nordvpn.com/WN365. It's a busy last couple of months of the year in professional wrestling. Just this month alone, we've got AEW Full Gear. That's next Saturday. You can purchase the event on a discounted price and actually use it as a pay-per-view bundle if you have Triller TV via AEW Plus over here in the UK. If you're in the United States, you can change your location to here in the UK. Then you can get AEW Plus on Triller TV. It's like $4.99 a month. And then you can watch every single episode of AEW Dynamite, the entire back catalogue, every single episode of AEW Collision, Rampage, Dark Elevation, pay-per-views at discounted rate. It's a pretty good deal. And then when you're talking about WWE, of course, you've got Survivor Series at the end of this month. You can watch that as part of your Netflix subscription. No ESPN subscription necessary. Again, all you have to do is change your location via VPN to an international territory like here in the UK. Then you can watch Raw, SmackDown, NXT, main roster PLEs, NXT PLEs, archive content, all through one Netflix subscription. In addition, John Cena's retirement match, of course, is Saturday night's main event next month in December. You can watch that for free on YouTube if you've got a VPN. Over here in the UK, we don't have Peacock, so we watch it for free on YouTube. You can too. All you've got to do is get a VPN, change your location to an international territory like here, and you can watch John Cena's retirement match for free. And if you use our link, you can save yourself some money and you can support this channel in the process. Next up on the list, Private Party. This year has been such a weird discussion point for Private Party because we haven't seen them really on AEW programming, and there were reports that their contracts were up at some point over the summer, but as of right now, it seems that they're still with All Elite Wrestling. Now, you're going to have to kind of backtrack a little bit here. Now, they've had 3 matches with AEW in 2025, but they all came within the space of a few weeks in January. Since then, we haven't seen them. We have not seen Private Party since they dropped the AEW World Tag Team Championships to the Hurt Syndicate earlier this year. Last year was a pretty big banner year. They won the AEW World Tag Team Championships for the first time in their career at AEW Fright Night Dynamite, defeating the Young Bucks. They defended them a couple of times, and then, as I said, you get into January this year, they dropped them to the Hurt Syndicate, and we never saw them again. They've had one match back in March of 2025 since they dropped the World Tag Team titles on AEW TV. That was at a HOG show in New York. But apart from that, we haven't heard from them or seen them. Now, there were rumors, as I mentioned over the summer, that their contracts were set to expire and WWE had strong interest. And people started to go, oh, okay, that makes sense why they disappeared off AEW television, because a lot of the time when talents are coming to the end of their deals or it looks like they're not going to re-sign with All Elite Wrestling, they're just taken off TV until their contracts expire. A bit similar to what happened with Mariah May / Blake Monroe earlier this year, when she informed AEW that she wasn't going to re-sign. She then put over Timeless Tony Storm at Revolution and then just disappeared until her contract expired. People thought it was going to be a similar situation with Private Party. Now, the summer's long gone and they're still technically under contracts with AEW, so it's unclear whether or not AEW's offered them a new deal. Other companies like WWE have reportedly shown interest. There was a recent report from Fightful Select's Sean Ross Sapp, who said that they still remain under contract. It might have been a case of, because of injuries, Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn, particularly Mark Quinn's had injuries. I think he had a shoulder injury. He was out for over a year. So it might be a case of yet another AEW tag team where their contracts don't expire at the same time, with injury time being added on. So they're waiting until both contracts expire. There was also part of that report from Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp that the Hurt Syndicate had kind of been mentors to Private Party behind the scenes and encouraged them to put on a bit of weight, go to the gym, get bigger. There were photos floating around of Mark Quinn and Isaiah Cassidy putting on some significant muscle. Now, is that because they plan to return to AEW TV and feud with the Hurt Syndicate, or is that because they're trying to bulk up before they go to New York? Kind of a mentality of the 1980s and 1990s, right? In WWE, it's the land of the giants. You've got to go there. That's not really the case anymore, so I don't know if that theory holds much substance, but still, Private Party, you could absolutely see WWE having interest. It's been reported that they have had interest, and you could see them being successful in WWE. Now, you go into then the conundrum of, in WWE on the main roster, how is tag team wrestling treated? It doesn't feel like it's it's a real spotlight division in WWE. You do get a lot of tag team title matches on Raw and SmackDown. The SmackDown tag team division has been booked better than the Raw tag team division. I mean, JD McDonough and Finn Balor recently lost the titles to a makeshift tag team of AJ Styles and Dragon Lee, and they'd only defended the titles once. Well, it might have been even their first defense when they dropped the titles, because they don't really do that much tag team title action on Raw. SmackDown, of course, they have had an active tag team division this year and a TLC match at SummerSlam for the WWE tag team titles that was good, but still, you don't regularly see, aside from that, sort of tag team titles being defended on PLEs. Would that be something for Private Party to consider? But if they went to NXT, that's a completely different conversation. Shawn Michaels likes to focus on divisions that maybe don't get the spotlight that they deserve over on the main roster, and you could see maybe Private Party doing well there. So it's really up in the air right now, but there is still a lot of speculation that Private Party could be bound for World Wrestling Entertainment. Next up, this one feels very much like a slam dunk, doesn't it? Danhausen. Danhausen has wanted out, seemingly, of All Elite Wrestling for quite some time. He hasn't been used for even longer. Danhausen, as of the time recording this video, is still under contract with AEW. Now, his deal has recently been extended into 2026 due to missed time from a torn pectoral muscle injury a couple of years ago. Now, despite this time being added onto his contract, there are reportedly no creative plans for him in AEW or Ring of Honor. Still, the last time we saw him on any AEW affiliated program was Final Battle last year, in December of last year, nearly a year ago, and people thought, right, Danhausen, he's back. We hadn't seen him for ages before that, but he was brought in at the last minute, and then that was the last time we saw him, because still, there was no creative plans for him. Now, despite his contract being extended, reportedly, he actually asked AEW to let his contract expire when it was originally set to expire, which was in July of 2025 over the summer. He said, please let it expire. AEW decided against it. They extended it until 2026 to account for the injury time. And as I said, there's no creative plans for him in All Elite Wrestling. There's been a fallout somewhere along the way, whether it was going back to Days of Collision, where some in AEW felt like he was prioritizing indie bookings over AEW bookings. Reportedly, he told AEW of his calendar, his schedule, and that he was open to doing it, a lot of things, and AEW clearly didn't believe that. So there's a fallout along the way, and there clearly is no desire to use him. The last time he competed for AEW on AEW programming was all the way back in 2023. It was in December, the 30th of December, 2023. He then made an appearance on Ring of Honor, had a match on Ring of Honor back in February of 2024. And then, like I said, right at the end of the year, we did see him at Final Battle. But since then, no AEW appearances, no Ring of Honor appearances. Still, despite being under contract with the company, nothing. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, he's remained very active. He's been very active throughout 2025 on the indie scene, whether it's wrestling for HOD, whether it's wrestling for SMW, whether it's wrestling for GCW. Most recently, at the time of recording this video, he competed for the GCW World title against Effie on November 9th. So he is remaining very active. And the general consensus is because of his ties to people in WWE, namely CM Punk, who's appeared in his vlogs, and they're friends and they're friendly. And also he feels probably best suited to WWE. When you think about WWE and the machine that's there when it comes to merchandising in particular, and the success of someone, say, like Mr. Iguana in AAA, who after one standout appearance at a Worlds Collide suddenly has puppets being made, t-shirts being made, going viral. You feel like WWE would look at someone like Danhausen and say, that's perfect. Think of the masks, the face paints, the puppets, the action figures, the t-shirts, the whatever it may be. He carries around teeth he was used to in Ring of Honor. You know, there's so much you could do with Danhausen that maybe people thought would happen in All Elite Wrestling. It just hasn't for whatever reason. But in WWE, whether that's on NXT or whether that's on the main roster, you feel like he'll do very well. He'll make a lot of money, sell a ton of merchandise, and it'll probably be a better space for him. So this one, certainly, Danhausen going to WWE when he's able to in 2026, it just feels inevitable, doesn't it? Next up, this one might be a bit later on, but Buddy Matthews. Buddy Matthews, his time in AEW has been so interesting, hasn't it? Because as of right now, look, he's sidelined, he's injured, so this probably adds on more time to his AEW contract. But actually, Matthews re-signed with AEW in February of 2024, with reports from July last year, confirming that he had actually signed a new contract, which was interesting because it was reported around in early 2024 that Buddy Matthews had actually asked for an early release from his contract. This is when reports were going around about Malachi Black possibly going back to WWE. Of course, we know eventually he did around just after WrestleMania this year when his contract expired at the end of last year. There were also reports about Miro and others, people that, Andrade, others that had, gone to AEW because their WWE situation hadn't worked out under Vince McMahon, but now Triple H was in control. They wanted to go back for quite some time. And people thought Buddy Matthews was a part of that. But despite asking for an early release, Tony Khan countered with a more lucrative offer, and it led to Matthews re-signing a multi-year contract in February 2024. Now, when we say multi-year, we don't know. Could it have been a 2-year contract, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? If it was just 2 years, then he'd be free and able to go back to WWE technically in February of next year. Now, as I mentioned, as of right now, he's out of action. He's been out of action since February of this year. He sustained an ankle injury during his entrance for his match against Kazuchika Okada for the AEW Continental Championship at AEW Grand Slam Australia. You can see the video where he jumps over the rope, he rolls his ankle. He still competed in the match. It was over 13 minutes. Since then, he's had a lot of trouble with this injury. Initially, it was reported that there was no break. He pretty much had done everything he could possibly do to the ankle, ligament tears, cartilage damage, but no break. And because of that, he didn't think he was going to have surgery. Now, in a new update regarding this, coming actually just around the last sort of few days or so at the time recording this video, sort of early November time, he posted on social media that he did actually have to undergo surgery for it. He underwent surgery in August. He shared a bit of a positive update saying that he's now able to do hack squats in the gym and what have you. So certainly he's on the road to recovery, but considering he's missed close to a year of action at this point, it was in February, now into November, he'll probably return to the ring maybe around February, March next year. They could add on another year. So anytime soon for a WWE return looks unlikely, but anything certainly possible. In an interview with Chris Van Vliet, that was around sort of April this year, so it was after his injury, he was asked if he would want to return to WWE, namely to work alongside his wife, Rhea Ripley, which has led to, again, a lot of speculation he could be on his way back to WWE at some point to work with her. He said, quote, "I think that's the big question, so I would love to do something with her. I think that story and our chemistry, just the way we are, would be good television. That's definitely something, an itch I'd like like to scratch. But the good thing about her in WWE and me in AEW, and us both being in the business, is that I would never want, and I don't think I'd ever get there, I'd never want to be jealous or get jealous of her in her position. She's a megastar. She's John Cena of women right now. And if I'm lowered, let's just say I'm doing enhancement matches or whatever, I don't want to be like, well, you're doing that, you get this special treatment, and I get this, then kind of resent her for her position. Like I said, I don't think it would ever happen, but I wouldn't ever want that to be an option. He then carried on by saying, would I love to work with her? Absolutely. I don't think there would be anyone in the wrestling industry from any company or any part of the world that wouldn't want to be doing something with Rhea Ripley. Whatever she touches turns to gold. So he was pretty non-committal on what could happen in the future. Anything's certainly possible, I suppose, when it comes to Matthews. And finally, MJF. He always talks about it, doesn't he? He always talks about the interest from WWE. He always talks about how he could go there and be a world champion and main event WrestleManias. He's always spoken about how Triple H is his idol, his inspiration. When he returned to AEW television after his injury in 2024, he came back wearing a Triple H-inspired outfit. That was at Double or Nothing in 2024, when he came back in the Triple H sort of jeans and jean jacket from Triple H's return in 2002. So we know that he's a fan, and he always has been a fan of Triple H. Now, in terms of his contract status, he keeps these things very quiet, and he always tries to work people, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Now, it was quietly actually mentioned by him in an interview in 2024 that he did actually sign a new contract with AEW, a multi-year deal in early 2024. Now, you would think with one of AEW's biggest stars, an AEW original, a former world champion, this would likely be for 4 or 5 years. Now, he stated on the SI Media with Jimmy Trainer podcast, the reports of $15 million per year were a little light, suggesting he was making more than that. Again, it's MJF. I'm not sure he's making $50 million per year. He tried to start the bidding war of 2024 storyline, but people in WWE never believed it, because MJF reportedly quietly actually re-signed with AEW in 2022, around the time of Double or Nothing, and the situation of MJF nearly walking out or not going to meet and greets at a time where he was going to be putting over Wardlow, and he was opening the show and he got squashed, and MJF taking a flight home, and this, that, and the other. Right after that, of course, he did the infamous Dynamite promo where he called Tony Khan an effing mark, and then he returned to All Out after CM Punk defeated Jon Moxley, and then, of course, Punk had the brawl out, the triceps injury, so they never really picked up on that storyline. An interesting what could have been situation, particularly considering their feud earlier on that year and the dog collar match and what have you. So the suggestion is that he's under contract for quite some time, but MJF, he's looking at Hollywood, of course. MJF is doing a lot of acting roles right now. He's in Violent Night 2. He was in Happy Gilmore 2. He's seemingly going to be, he was in The Iron Claw as well, and he's seemingly going to be doing other acting opportunities, and maybe he might feel that being in WWE might be the best thing for that. Although he might also feel that actually, with what I'm doing in AEW right now, they're allowing me to do all these outside projects, and I've got a really good position there, and I make good money there, and I can kind of do what I want there. That's the best thing for me. But MJF's still a really young guy. People forget this about Maxwell Jacob Friedman. He is somewhat of a wrestling prodigy. He's not even 30 years old. He's 29. He's not even necessarily in his prime wrestling years at this point. So there's still a lot of career ahead for Maxwell Jacob Friedman, despite getting bitten by the acting bug. Reportedly, he is factored into AEW creative for the rest of this year, and he's going to be back soon, so we'll see. But I don't know if MJF's going to be in AEW for life. It feels like at some point, given his connections to people in WWE, namely a Cody Rhodes versus MJF match at WrestleMania could just be something that they both want to tick off their list at some point. So there you go, guys. There are 5 AEW stars that could be on their way to WWE. What are your thoughts on the list? Which ones are more likely than others? Let me know your thoughts, your predictions, your opinions, as always, in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe. As I said right there, we are just over 130 subscribers away from 25k, which is our goal, to get 25k in 2025. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. Really appreciate everyone for tuning in, as always, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.